Let's start now.
Sure. Okay, so welcome everybody, and yeah, it's great to have this session with Desmond together. So I think today we will more likely to become podcast style to have a chit chat with each other and to throw like some questions and to share our experiences. And so if you have any questions or you have different opinions, please share in this chat box. And our colleague will let us know so we can have a, kind of like a group chat because this is not really like a webinar to teach you how to do something. It's more like to share the experiences. And everybody has different experiences in different industry. So yes, I think we can start there. And thank you for joining us, Desmond. And would you like to maybe I think we can start from introductions.
Yeah, no, sure thing. And thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me here. Um, I guess just with a very quick introduction to who I am and Sinorbis. For those who don't know, my name is Desmond. I'm the Director of Global Business Development at Sinorbis. And Sinorbis being a company that is a tech company ultimately, software provider that has created a digital experience platform that allows any company to build and manage and operate any digital asset for any market in the world, all centrally managed in one tool. So for markets like China in particular, which I think will be a big focus today, the ability to get through the firewall and create assets that are not just locally optimized for content, but also technically optimized to load through the firewall and for Chinese behaviors. So yeah, my role primarily is helping a lot of our clients build their strategies and ensure they're getting results from the activities that they do in those markets. So hopefully I'll be able to draw from a lot of that experience today and what we talk about.
Sure. I think, yeah, that will be, like a really something like people will nice to hear because there's a firewall things. I mean, just this one is already quite problematic here. So yeah, I think, yeah, we can go like a deep dive for more questions and also more discussions. So I also give you guys like a very quick introduction because I'm not really good at introducing myself. And then I'm Anne and I work in a localization industry for more than like 15 years now and I worked for Blend for like 5 years. So this is also very nice to have me here and to share my experiences. And I'm original from Taiwan and live and work in Shanghai for like 10 years. So yeah, that's the reason I think I'm here to share like more experiences with everyone. So okay, I think we can start our questions because we actually prepared some of the questions and we will like to, have some chit chat based on these questions. So Desmond, I think we can also start from the first one directly. Is like, what are the most common misconceptions international businesses have when approaching China market?
Yeah. This was actually, my favorite question of the bunch. And it was interesting to see that as the first one. And I'd love to hear your perspective on this too, Anne, about what you've seen. But, the common misconceptions that I've seen are that people think that China's a quick win. They see
Yeah,
China as this massive opportunity, and it is, right? Like the second biggest economy in the world. The demand for pretty much any kind of consumer product or service that you may be offering. And lots of other companies have succeeded and done wildly well in China. So there's this assumption that, oh, I just need to be there and they'll find us. We'll succeed. And it's just not the case. Building your audience and finding your niche in China takes years. It's a
yeah,
multi-year adventure just to get to the starting point of building to a stable ROI for your activities in China. The
yeah.
first 2 years minimum, like pure investment of building an audience and your foundations to
Mm.
achieve the rest of it. So yeah, anyone who wants to succeed understands that China is a long-term play.
Yeah, exactly. You just mentioned about just be there. That's exactly what I put in my like there's a small sheet in front of me. It's just like, yeah, that's
Yeah,
the first one because the market is huge. So everybody just think like, yeah, I just be there and I don't need to do any efforts. But anyways, the client will come themselves. But yeah, that's actually not the case. If you don't do branding or marketing or even like a sales approach, like all these activities here in this region it can be, you can wait for like endless, but there's nothing will come. So yes, I think that's the biggest like misconception. But I also feels like well, because I work here, so most of the time I work for the foreign companies, and from these 10 years of experiences, a lot of foreign companies wants to approach this market. So I got a lot of like, interview opportunities as well. But most of the time, they just want to, they think it's pretty simple. Just hire a person locally and can speak the language, then we can win the market. But the
Mm.
problem is, this is also the salesperson. I work as a sales, but I also need the support from the company. I need the support from the marketing. I need the support from all the other teams to help me to, really grow this market. So most of the time, hire one person in the region is also not it's not the best solution to win the market. So yes, that will be something I would like to, add on for this time for this question.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, and I studied Chinese, and from a Westerner, so from an outsider looking in.
Yeah,
And the key thing I saw and continue to see from a Western perspective is that China is confusing.
yeah,
Um, Westerners don't know how to approach it. And if you look at a Western marketing team and everything that they've been trained to do in their formal education, in their on-ground education for how they learn to become excellent marketers, the tools they use, none
mm,
of that is applicable to the specifics of China. The
yeah,
tools and systems are completely different. Obviously, the language is different, but the culture and meaning behind everything that you do and convey is different. And most marketers in the West are likely, and I'm going to use this word, afraid of China. So I think that's why a lot of there's that tendency to try and find someone in China, build
mm,
trust with that person, say, okay, please, you look after it because I don't
yeah,
know what I'm doing.
yeah,
So I think a
okay,
lot of what we do, I mean, at Sinorbis at least, is to try and bridge that gap and ensure that the Western teams have full transparency and control, have the right tools and systems and levers to pull. So you don't need to treat China with a double standard. All the
mm,
basic marketing principles are the same, aren't they? Like the
yeah,
funnel, build
yeah,
awareness, build engagement. The channels you use and the language you use will be different, but
yeah.
fundamentally it's the same thing. And so I don't think Western marketers should shy away from their activity there.
Yeah, but I think afraid is the right word to describe this whole, I don't know, situation. Because even like, for example, like even they want to build the trust with this one salesperson, still it takes times to really
Mm.
build the trust from this person. It's not just like they hire you, they will immediately like believe whatever you suggest. So this is I don't know, this is a yeah, really kind of like cultural gap or something. This is not really like you can easy to apply into this business model, but it's more like, all this cultural background, language, whatever, everything is like, that literally like everything combined together. So yeah, that's, I think, yeah, that's kind of like this two biggest misconceptions, to conclude these first questions.
Yeah, fair enough. And jumping in from that, actually, they may be afraid on the marketing level, but on the strategic business level, there's still obviously a lot of interest in China. And we're talking about what China needs specifically. Why do you think companies are still prioritizing China as they are and looking for ways to justify this very specific investment that's needed for the China market?
Well, I mean, seriously, people just see this is a huge market, so it's pretty obvious there's some potential.
Mm.
So I think that's actually one and only kind of like a, concept for most of the companies, like, try to approach this market. Then yeah, because I mean, this is the second biggest economy, like the country. So I mean, besides of that, where to go? So I mean, at least
Mm.
at present times, maybe that's the main reason why all these foreign companies would like to still like approach. By the way, it's foreign companies, and not just mean like Western companies, but also the other like Asian, like like the companies in Japan, in Korea, in Southeast Asia, like wherever people anyways will not give up this market. So yeah, I think what do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, it's the Occam's razor, right? The simplest explanation is the most likely in that yeah, it's big. Um, but it's funny, like, we look at markets like Europe and we understand that it's big, but clearly that's like, many
Mm.
different markets merged into one. And the same
Right.
thing for the US. We know that that's 50 different markets.
Yeah.
But for China, for some reason, the Western perspective typically is to see that as like a single big market.
Mm.
But it's not the case, is it? Like there's different preferences and cultural tendencies, and different competition levels at different cities all around the country.
Mm.
What will work in Shanghai won't work in Chengdu. And for many companies, it may be worth looking at tier two cities that they hadn't considered before instead of trying to compete in the main markets immediately. And uh, that doesn't always seem to be apparent to many Western businesses when they enter the market. In your experience, obviously in the localization scene, are you seeing that when it comes to people building their brand and needing to understand not just what their identity is, but where they think in China this is going to be fitting the best?
This is a, yeah, actually, this is pretty broad questions, to answer because it really has to depends on your core business. Like your core business, where to go, your strategy, how much budget do you have to try to invest in this market. And so, yeah, for example, like you said, why most of the companies will set up the office probably, in the north first instead of Shanghai is because the cost is less. And also it depends on the different industry. For example, like luxury, the first choice definitely is Chengdu, Shanghai. Like like it is a top four international cities in China. So that's really different. But for the localization, localization somehow, well, I think the company who comes here first will. That's really also the different ways because for the localization industry, if you want to come and win the market, first of the first step will be acquire somebody who is already locally succeed for many years. So you can actually benefit a lot of the benefits a lot from this local partner. So maybe Beijing and Shanghai still the first concept of entering the market. But for example, like luxury, yeah, definitely is like I just mentioned is the top four cities will be the priorities. But besides of that, it's not just think about where to go first, but also like what type of the methods and what kind of like methodologies to reach out to more customers besides of just like locally set up the office. So yes, that's
Yeah, we see this as well, especially in service industries like higher education. We have a lot of universities that use our software, and
Okay.
what they found is, you know, yes, China's a big market, just in the same way that, Vietnam is an emerging market. But because China is basically lots of different markets in one,
Mhm. Yeah.
recruiting from students from markets like Beijing and Shanghai is not really possible for so many universities. There's too much competition. There's too much
Mhm.
noise. They may have a local representative, like you said, set up
Mhm.
there, but it's very hard unless you are a Harvard or an MIT, to
Mhm.
cut through the noise. And if you were able to get the right feedback mechanisms through,
Mhm.
say, your digital channels and understand where your followers are in the country or where your web traffic is coming from, you may be able to see, actually, there's a city in the northeast called Shenyang, just above North Korea, that actually
Yeah.
is fantastic for us. We're getting lots of traffic there, and it makes sense. There's a
Yeah.
large manufacturing base of Western companies like Michelin or BMW out of there, and a great
Mm.
exposure to people wanting to work for international brands. Hence the
Mm.
interest to study, but there's less competition for going
Yeah.
after these students. So understanding that is critical. But I guess the secret is to have the feedback mechanism to know how you adapt your strategy over time, right? And then how do you localize your content to reflect your audience?
Yeah, I guess so because I mean, Well, but maybe because of when you're just doing the branding, then maybe like you can just see the whole country as one. But if you want to do some like like a marketing, like a more specifically to meet like a local consumers habit or preferences or everything, then probably that's the other methodology. So this is
Mhm.
what I said. This is pretty hard for me to conclude in like one solution or one experience and can apply for the whole. Even this is like even we just talk about like China. So yeah, that's really like pretty hard. I think that's the reason why like you can see a lot of the brands start to because you also know there's a multiple like these social media channels here and then that's the reason why all these companies has to use different ways to expose their themselves let the people to see in different ways because all different channels has different target audience. That's the reason why I mean okay, for example, like in the West it's pretty easy that it's Facebook or Google or something else. I like Instagram, but then here in China, it's like a Zhihu or Xiaohongshu or Douyin, which is TikTok, and also like Weibo, WeChat, even Bilibili, like all these platforms. You can just like have a different audiences who are interested in your service or product, and so yeah, that's really complicated.
Yeah, well, it's a big challenge for Western brands, isn't it? It's a whole new digital ecosystem that they now have to master and create content for, when each
Yeah.
channel kind of requires different kinds of content, and the algorithms operate differently, and there's different purposes behind it. I mean, I guess it depends on what industry the Western company is in, right? But
Mm.
what would you suggest would be sort of the foundations for what a company would need in China to be accessible?
Um, yeah, because I mean, like we mentioned in the beginning, it also firstly it depends on if it is B2C or B2B. So if this is B2C,
Mm,
and I think you can see all the brands they are everywhere because they're just afraid maybe I'm not showing there, and then I can lose like a potential customers from that platform. That's the reason why you will see like they are everywhere. Even some like luxury brands, you can already see them on Taobao. Taobao to me is not even one of these social media channels, but then still like people will start to using it as one of these marketing funnels and to to show themselves. So this is first of all, you have to really understand what's your like a core value is a service or the product. And
mm,
what's about your business like a target audience is like like a B2C or B2B. And then later will be to think about which one can really match with your like a target audience. So fundamentally, I will say WeChat will be the prioritized consideration because now WeChat
mm.
becomes more and more powerful. Like you can literally do everything there. They have like mini programs, and also you can have some like this public how to say that in English because I have my Chinese in my mind. This like official account or whatever, like you can
Mm,
post all these articles and everything. A mini program you can literally buy the product or buy the service from it, and you can also have this like kind of like a website style. Also, you can like check it on WeChat. They can also serve you as some like a small games to interact with the brand and everything. So fundamentally, I will say WeChat. And yeah, before the rest, probably, you can still, the others is nice to have, but probably not necessary.
I completely agree with that. And it's actually one of the misconceptions I'm seeing coming out. And I think it's because um, a lot of the Westerners, again, they're not directly involved in China. And
Hmm.
so the feedback they get is from the person that they put in charge of China. And that person may not actually necessarily be a marketer, right? They
Hmm.
may have many other qualifications that aren't marketing ones.
Hmm.
And when they get told that, oh, okay, the latest trend is TikTok, is Douyin in China, the latest trend is Xiaohongshu, therefore we need to be on that channel.
Yeah.
And it's thinking channel first, audience second.
Yes.
Um, which is kind of the other way around. And when in the Western channels, we wouldn't think that way. It wouldn't be, we need a Facebook page and then we'll figure out the rest based on who we want to target. It's like, no, no, no. If your target audience is under 30, you don't worry about Facebook. Leave it in the dust.
It's true. That's true. That's the same thing. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is so I mean, okay, but that's also like okay, I want to mention this because we're talking about all these methodologies for the companies who, starts to build the trust from the Chinese audiences, consumers, whatever we call them. But the thing is, like, if you are already super famous, like, all this luxury brand, like, you are already like, super famous enough, you actually don't care so much about the methodology. You can really just be here
Mm.
and win the big money. So actually just share with the Korean earlier. It's like my brother worked for Louis Vuitton and he's like the manager for 8 stores here in Shanghai and 8 stores in Shanghai. Every single day, the target is like a 5 million for each and they can reach that target every single day. So do you think that Vuitton needs to do all these, channels or whatever, like what we just like a talk here? They don't need to. They really just be here. So this is the other thing. Like you have to build your trust with the local customers. So all these channels really have to think about, is this necessary? Well, but literally, this is kind of like this whole ecosystem, like how you really enter this new market. It's like you really have to go on all the channels, or you really have to, separate like which target audience is your core value, and then you just like, spend your budget to a certain specific platforms. So yes, that's a
Mm.
really a huge topic.
Fair enough. And Louis Vuitton, I mean, maybe it's their fault that this false conception that all you have to do is rock up and you'll get results. Maybe it's their fault for setting a false
Yeah,
standard.
that's the reason why others just feel like
Yeah.
I cannot just also be there and win something. So yeah, that's probably the reason.
Yeah. Do you have any examples maybe of like a non-Louis Vuitton
Mm.
example of a company that's come in, didn't have, a major brand to begin with in China and built it from scratch and was able to win?
From the other industries brands, I don't really, have a because actually you can name all these famous brands that which you can name it. They are all success in this market. But if you want to ask me like who is not, like really famous in the beginning but still enter, then I can actually just take our industry's examples because some of the
Mm,
top tens, the first time they come here, they have no idea what to do. So most of them will acquire like the local agencies, like I mentioned in the beginning, and later they will start to build up their like a trust, their brandings and everything. So for the people to understand, okay, who you are, why you're here, like what's your business, blah blah blah. So that's actually also some of them they are pretty succeed here because you don't need to do marketing anymore or branding, but they are still keeping doing it to make their brand can expose to like most of the clients. But they are, to be honest, compare with the other like smaller ones or these top tens already like famous enough. It's not because of from the industry, it's because they do the right thing. And one of them, I don't want to name it, but then one of them actually failed at beginning. But then they start to adjust a little bit of themselves, like how to compete with the local agencies and also like how to set the market price to meet this market. Like they quite like they just a lot, and then right now they're pretty succeed. So yes, that can be the examples like I can give here. Do you have
yeah,
any
absolutely.
from your clients or?
Yeah, well, I've got one example that comes to mind. I was at the China British Business Council event earlier on, and one of the speakers there, I was there obviously visiting a lot of our clients. Wedgwood, um, crockery and fine china. Interesting case study that they actually were speaking at the event, talking about their experience. And obviously, they're a very old company, from the 1700s, like one of the oldest in the world that are continuously in business. And ironically, selling fine china that's made in the UK to China, which is over the course of their 300 years in business is hilarious. But
Yeah.
um, what was interesting is that their success wasn't immediate in China.
Mm,
Um, we talk about, you mentioned, local competitors and how you sort of position yourselves. Selling China into China is not something that everyone can compete well in.
yeah.
Um, but where they were able to separate themselves is two main things. It came into their communication and their branding and their comms on their social channels. Obviously, they play up the whole heritage British quality
Mm,
element, which does play well in the market,
yeah.
as it does everywhere, to be honest.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, and this is something specific to China, they aligned the product and positioned it to be in line with traditions of gift giving in Chinese culture. And
Mhm.
they became a sort of a staple high-end gift
Mm,
to be, given on sort of major holidays and events, um, on various levels of occasions. And it's that specific process of getting into the I guess the zeitgeist of this being a premium gift in gift giving occasions. That's what allowed them to sort of connect with consumers properly and allowed their business to grow. But
mm,
just, selling to, households, just generically wasn't going to
right.
get them the success that they achieved. They needed to
Right.
find a positioning in the Chinese market that was,
Mm,
specific and unique to the culture. And that was the
mm.
key to the success, which I found fascinating.
Yeah, well, that's really actually like I mean the good examples because when you mention about this Wedgwood, that's they are really positioned themselves in a good way, I guess. So that's the reason why they can win the success because otherwise, like there will be too many competitors here, and if they position in a wrong way and or the same way as the other competitors, then the price won't win. So yes,
Yeah.
that's yeah. Mm.
You're never going to win on price in China, and never as a foreign company.
Wow, yeah, that's pretty scary. Like if I can share actually here like how much our industry can go like how much lower with the our service,
Mm.
then you'll be amazed. It's just like yeah, it was crazy. So I hope now, like but then now probably it's even worse because all these AI systems and solutions start to coming out. And so yeah, China is really you will have a lot of like competitors to compete together with everything. So
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe that's probably a good segue to identify any failure stories. If you have any as like warnings for,
yeah.
for for some brands coming into the market. I mean, we don't need to name and shame any brands if you don't want to, but uh, what do you think? Do you have any examples there?
Example of sorry, can you
Yeah, of
say?
a failure in of a market entry into China, or
Right.
or a failure of positioning or communication.
Well, I mean, there's a classic one. I believe like everybody still uses this as a case study everywhere, maybe the webinar or everywhere. eBay. eBay was a
Mm,
pretty like a classic. Like 20 years ago, they came here, they acquired Wang, I guess. Yeah, it's called Wang. That was another e-commerce platform here originally locally. But when eBay came, they acquired them and definitely they got all the benefits from them, like a consumer database and everything. But then after the acquisition, I have no idea why, but then they brought all the Western methods to operate in this market. So, for example, they don't do Alipay. They use PayPal. But 20
mm,
years ago, I think the consumers are probably, even less people know what was PayPal is. And so it's like, then later they like move all these servers and everything back to the States. So when the consumer here in China, they
mm,
want to download this website or whatever, and everything gets like a super slow. So like from time to time, and then Taobao was, kind of the same time to like a to start their business. So later, I mean, eBay had to leave this market, and then Taobao definitely, become like one of this biggest e-commerce things that. And this
mm.
is really like, I mean, this is pretty classic and simple like examples that the people know here, and usually we will use it as a failure case study. And really, like, you don't need to even go deeper for this discussion, like why they fail, because even just like a, payment method is already can foresee the failure in the future. So yeah, this is
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the remedy for that is that the Western teams need to be trained to understand what's required of the Chinese market.
yeah,
Um, and this is the balance to strike, right? Like we talked about, not outsourcing everything another company in China entirely. You still need to have control, but at the same time, you can't just copy and paste what you do in the States and then have that work in China. The Western team needs to be trained and equipped with all the right tools that enables them to be effective in China,
yeah.
and
Right.
support the Chinese team properly
Mhm.
with what they
Yeah.
require, right?
Exactly. So and that's why I
Mm,
always say I always want, invite people to come to visit China. You don't really need to work here or live here to understand the
mm,
market. You can just come, travel once or something. Then you will already feel that this market is already different than before. So they have their own way. It's the same thing. If the Chinese companies go to like English speaking countries, they will not do the Chinese way and try to win the market. So yeah, this is actually the same thing. Like, so people just, I think people just need to have like a more open-minded and to, like if you really want to enter this a foreign market, then try to think and do the way that people do there. So yeah.
yeah. And I mean, that being said, it draws an interesting parallel. And I think that it enters a lot of Western marketers' minds because they think, well, okay, we've got our own brand positioning and brand identity. Like, are you saying that we have to create a separate parallel Chinese version of that in order to succeed? Or is there a way in which you can make your Western brand and identity resonate in the Chinese market?
Wow, this is a hard one because yeah, this I think this can be also, the same way that we just discussed previously from the, the other questions. It's just like like your core value of your business and how you position yourself, like a branding, branding wisely or your service, a product or whatever. And so from there, you can see how you present yourself in this market. So yeah, I will say the same.
Mm. Yeah, there must be a way forward. Uh, there are like the way this comes to a head often is like even just the brand names that people choose in China, because
Yeah.
you may have to, for your company, pick a brand name that's going to be in Chinese.
Yeah.
So it's an opportunity to reinvent yourself because in Chinese characters, there's meaning behind every word. That's, a synonym, or an
Yeah,
interpretation to show your values, right? So there's some great examples I've seen, like Ford. It's like Ford Motor Company when they went into China, that they made the name Ford, right? Which
right.
has a lot of synonym like association with luck and
Hmm.
good qualities. Um, how reliable Ford cars actually are. To be, I'll leave that for the mechanics.
That's hard for me because I speak Chinese, so I never really think about why they translate it in that way. Is that something, behind that? To me, it's just like, okay, that's a Chinese name here. So,
Uh,
but yeah, for the foreigners who learn this language, then probably you guys can, feel more about, something behind that. But to be honest, really, like all our names, there's a something behind it. So
mm,
if the companies wants, and by the way, anyways, the Western companies, whoever wants to come to this market, you have to translate your brand into Chinese. That's a kind of the regulation and everything. So yeah, I think that will be the good way to position yourself, like how you want to present in front of your, like consumers. And so yeah, you can choose a right name for it.
yeah. So have the right channels and also make sure you're communicating in a way that makes sense for the Chinese audience. So I suppose here that just copying and pasting what you use on Western channels and say, okay, just translate it into Mandarin and post it on WeChat. That's not going to
Yeah,
work, is it?
it's not going to
Yeah.
work. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, fair enough.
By the way, I actually just see from the chat some yeah, sorry, I couldn't read your name, but Is that the name is Josephina? Okay, here's a question. In terms of localization, which kind of Chinese would you suggest to start with? Let's say for help center to knowledge base of the product. It depends because for China, it's simplified Chinese, but for Hong Kong, it's traditional Hong Kong. But in Taiwan, it's traditional Taiwan. But the funny thing is, like, I don't know why, but Taiwanese people, for example, like me, I couldn't really read the traditional Chinese in Hong Kong. So people who wants to save money, they will translate the traditional Chinese Taiwan for both markets. But then if you want to do China, then definitely simplify Chinese. So yeah, that's how you can start with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Uh, well, thank you there. That's good. I
Yeah.
saw another question actually pop up in the Q&A spot. And we've touched on this already, but maybe just to go over it, and because I think got a good experience with this one. Echo Chen has asked, if foreign companies want to target the Chinese market, what edge should they have to be able to compete with local competitors? And I think, the question there has the subtext of the local competitors are going to be cheaper and very aggressive. So how can you, as a foreign company, how can you cut through?
Sorry, I couldn't see the question. Can you mention again?
Yeah, it's in the Q&A box. I think it's just separate from the
Yeah.
webinar chat.
Right. Okay. So, on to target Chinese, what edge they should have to compete with local competitors. Well, Sam, you have to see which industry you're going to compete with. And so, yeah, this is also hard to say one thing and to apply for the all industries and also like all competitors because even in our industry we still like I just mentioned top 10 but also like a boutique types of agencies and also some like a singular language service provider so in different levels you also have to see like you're in like a which level you compete with the who and start from there and you can start to like come back and think about your own strategy so that's not yeah that's also not like a one answer and it can apply for the whole methodology.
Mm. It's funny, you say that, because yeah, the whole methodology needs to be different and adapted. But
Mm.
the Chinese market is so competitive in certain industries that it actually drives innovation. The whole company changes as a result. So I was talking about Ford and just speaking of cars, BMW for the longest time have been bringing in like the 3 Series, the most popular sedan, as a long wheelbase for China.
Right.
And obviously they did that uniquely for the Chinese market because in most cases people who were affording that BMW, typically had a driver. So they were in the backseat.
Yeah.
Versus the Western audience, which, BMW is positioned as, the ultimate driving experience. It's all about being behind the wheel. Whereas in
Right.
China, it was a different proposition altogether. So there was a product modification and a positioning modification for the market, which is what enabled it to maintain a luxury status. Because what's considered luxury in the UK may not always translate to luxury in
Mm,
China. So
mm,
meeting your audience where they are has been critical for that.
mm. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Mm,
So I think we talk about how you position and how to actually make sure that what you're saying is going to resonate with your audience.
mm.
Um, how do you think the Western teams should be equipped so that they can do this? Obviously, a lot of the work may come from, the local Chinese teams, but ensuring the Western teams do have the ability to have oversight, have the ability to contribute and give the Chinese team support. How do you think they should go about doing that?
Well, I mean, okay, I don't want to offend people, but then if you ask me that, I would say do your homework because I mean, we live in centuries with all this internet stuff and everything. So really, just like if your team asks for some support, then try to based on your professional knowledge. If you're doing marketing, then based on that, based on what you know, and try to learn the other market. Try to learn the Chinese market. Try to figure out what's going on from the internet or from wherever it possible to get some knowledges and try. Just, try to do the homework and to support the team. Because I can also share one of the funny examples. One of my companies previously, I asked for some marketing support, like, generate leads and everything. And the first lead I got from the marketing team is called Alibaba Jack Ma. And when I received it, I was like, okay. I said, did you want me to outbound Jack Ma? Okay. I don't even know. Can I reach out to him? Like, like the reception probably just like hang up immediately. This is same thing to outbound to Bill Gates or, like Steve Jobs or like all these big ones. That's what I mean. Do the homework. It's just, this is for this common sense. This is, you don't need the people who locate in APAC and to tell you, say, no, 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 don't do that. No, you don't need to do that. Some like a common sense, basic knowledge, you can literally learn from the internet or right now, ChatGPT or, like all these solutions, like you can just learn from it. That's how the Western team has to equip to build up your basic knowledge and then common sense of this market. This is the same thing, like, like the
Mm.
Asian people knows about, some basic culture from the West and like, all this like a Christmas, Santa, whatever things. These are common sense. So that's what I will say.
I love that
Yeah,
story, and
from you.
yeah, getting the inbound lead from Jack Ma. So here, cold call Jack. Maybe he's
Yeah.
interested. It's great.
Yeah. From
Exactly
your
right.
from yeah, I want to also learn
Well,
from.
we've done something quite similar to that actually, because yeah, while what we offer is a software, right, that allows the Western teams to have all the tools they need to do their marketing in China. But we know that not everyone is comfortable with the content or has enough knowledge or has a Chinese marketing team just waiting, ready to go.
Yeah.
So we actually, by necessity, built an entire wing of our business designed for services and support. So to
Right.
give guidance, strategy advice, and support for the Western teams to guide them in this respect.
Mm,
Help light, basic content concepts,
mm,
ideas of what's happening in the Chinese calendar in a general sense for what topics to be focusing on in your content and where things are appropriate. Just to give them all the support they need because the Western teams from the outset typically don't have that knowledge and haven't done their homework, so to speak, like you said, on what to do there. And they needed that extra support. Now, the
mm.
goal of this is to teach them to fly so that the
Yeah.
Western teams can have the ability to then just run with the tools and be experts on their own. But a lot of them do need a lot of that help in the beginning to get them to that point.
Yeah.
So it's a journey.
So yeah. But anyways, this is well it actually is go back to like what are we discussing in the beginning? Like all this cooperation like discussion, everything is built up by different background, culture, language, like everything. So yeah, communicate with the team probably the like the way to really grow the business together.
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to be a team effort. And
Yeah.
I would encourage everyone on the webinar, if you have questions or comments on any of that or want to dive into anything that Anne and I have discussed, feel free just to put it into the chat and we'll get to it. Um, but yeah, it's another and we mentioned before about potential failures. And I
Hmm.
think there comes the importance of good translation. And I know this is something that Blend does quite well. One of the high profile case studies that we've seen for failure in this regard in China was KFC. And it even turned up in my textbook actually when I was studying this at university, so ages ago now.
Really?
Well, yeah, when they entered the market, because in
You know
English,
about that? Yeah, because I don't think I'm familiar with this effect, like a
yeah,
KFC thing. Yeah.
I guess you could call it a blunder because they've clearly recovered. They do very well in China. But
Okay.
the slogan that they've used globally, finger licking good.
Okay.
And that's the idea. You finish it, you eat with your hands, you lick your fingers at the end of the meal. They wanted to trademark that concept. And in China, they went in and translated it to "eat your fingers off." So it just didn't work. It didn't resonate with the audience. They didn't have a connection or an emotional connection to that, and also it just didn't make sense. It just sounded ridiculous.
Mhm.
So they needed to modify how they talk about it and what their main slogan was for the market. But it's amazing that no one in their process had called that out before they went live.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Mm. But
yeah.
that can happen in, you know, I mean, in our process, mainly it's still like a manual work. But now, of course, it's different because we
Mm,
start to implement like a lot of this, you know, like tech or solutions and tools to support. But still, like most of the time is manual work. So this can happen. Yeah, but well, I got one example when I worked in Taiwan. It's like we come, not us, but in somebody else, completely translate the brand into their competitor's brand name. And nobody figured that out from all this process. And even this, and this is tech company. So that's their laptop manual. And they printed out already. And they put it into a box and everything. And I don't know, but somebody came out of nowhere and figured out. And so yeah, there's a whole thing just like and this localization agency actually pay a lot to you know to cover this mistake. But that was like a yeah, long time ago. But it's like you said, why nobody really you know figure that out during this whole process? And I think it's really like localization is still more or less. You really cannot just like rely on the machine all the time. The people here is a little bit different because you know we cannot do just like a literal translation. Localization is not just about the content anymore because
mm,
now we're talking about you know all this like branding, marketing, whatever methodologies. If you still literally translate something and to put it on your website, I believe nobody will really you know get this like eye catchy about this whole content thing. So yeah, the gaming companies will be the great examples because right now they're not care about because if the product is good enough, then the consumers will not go pick up the mistakes from the content itself. It's the same thing as when we're in child. Like we play the video games in Japanese. We couldn't speak the language, but we can still play the game. So in that case, I mean, for example, like gaming companies, right now they will start to think about localize the character, localize the storylines, localize everything, even like the voiceover and whatever. But the content itself will be more like, you know, like a supportive service, product, or whatever. But the main thing is still to localize the product, to localize your brand image to your local market audience.
yeah, exactly. So it's funny. We're talking about what's needed for China here and why it's so special is because it's not just translating if you're a French company going into Spain, where you've got exactly the same channels, exactly the same type of audience, you're just changing the language. In this case, we're talking about your different channels that are needed, the different technology, the different skill set and training that's needed for the Western team to know how to support China, and then of course the different content and how it's not going to be just a direct translation. So there's a lot of work that's required here. And as we talked about at the beginning of this, it's got to be worth it, right? Luckily, the Chinese market is big enough that it's worth all that effort
Yeah.
to get that sorted.
Otherwise, we will not even have this discussion today. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
There
but
are other countries that are just as difficult, but they don't get the level of investment because the commercial opportunity just isn't as significant.
right. Yeah,
Mm.
right. Cool. I think we can start. Ah, cool. Hmm. Right. Yes, I also feel like we actually discussed quite a lot of, you know, from like different angles and everything to talk about this market and everything. But it really, it's just like everywhere. Like I think we talk about, you know, a lot of things and details. So I hope like people get what they want. And if you don't, please reach out to us still because, you know, you can find us from LinkedIn and everything. So I believe we are open to have, you know, further discussion with everyone. And here will be, I here will be Blend and Sinorbis some introduction, and so feel free to scan this barcode and to get like a more information from the company.
Yeah, happy to obviously discuss specific use cases if they're not something that you wanted to bring your concern or question out in an audience in front of other people. Happy to have that chat separately and go into detail
Wow.
about what you may
Yeah.
be dealing with.
Mm.
Yeah, but thank you so much for having me here, Anne. It's great to chat with you and discuss these
Yeah,
things. I
thank
mean,
you
I could
for
talk for
listening.
hours about this. It's such a
Yeah.
fun topic.
But also thank you to to join this session. So got the chance to really go like deep dive into this market chat. So yeah, it's very nice for today's session.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for attending. We'll be in
Thank
touch
you.
later.
Yeah, thank you. Ciao.
Bye.